Hello, I'm Craig DeRoche, the CEO of Family Policy Alliance. Welcome to today's episode where we're exploring the future of leadership in a key state that impacts families. We're talking about Kansas, right there in the heartland, where several voices are seeking the next Republican nomination for governor in an effort to win back conservative leadership in the state. Believe it or not, Kansas doesn't always get that. Joining me to discuss the issue and other key topics, the Kansas Family Voice's new president, Brittany Jones. She recently became the leader of our state partner this year after previously leading policy and engagement for the organization. She has been a key player in passing the Fairness in Women's Sports Act, age verification requirements, and pornographic website, controls over that, Help Not Harm Act, and many more. Kansas has been led by a Democratic governor since 2019, but momentum is shifting. Join us as we reveal what's at stake. And Brittany, there's a lot at stake in Kansas. Thank you for being on the show. Thanks for joining me here.
Thank you so much for having me, Craig.
Well, let's jump right into it. What inspired you to participate in the Kansas gubernatorial forum, and why did you think events like that are important for voters? I just am fascinated by this. I love this.
Yeah, and something that we've done in Kansas before when we had a heated primary. But the whole idea of the gubernatorial forum is to make sure Kansas voters actually know what these candidates are thinking. We've got a 9-way race currently in our primary, depending on how you're counting, which is pretty large primaries. We've had larger primaries in Kansas, but we really want people to have the time and the opportunity to get to know these people, not just their sound bites that tend to happen at the end of the race. And we're still more than a year out from the general. We're about 10 months out from the primary, which is in August of next year. But we need all of this time so people can get to know. When you've got 9 people on your ballot, you really need the time to really learn about their backgrounds, learn about who they are and what they actually believe. And so we're really excited for this forum that will be happening in a couple of weeks for Kansas voters to really get to know these people.
And you're hosting this forum in Kansas.
Yes, we are.
And how many of the 9 candidates are expected to be there?
So we have 6 that have RSVP'd. And, those are the front runners in the race. We do, unfortunately, have one candidate in the Republican primary who might call herself a Republican, but her voting record certainly doesn't show that. She is against school choice. She has voted with the Democrats the majority of the time on the pro-life issues. She voted against our Adoption Protection Act, which was one of the first bills that we passed to protect religious freedom and adoption in the state of Kansas from the radical takeover of the LGBTQ agenda. So there's a lot of concern that she may try to divide the vote and give us effectively another Democratic governor, even if she wins the ticket. So we're excited to host this and talk about the issues with all of them, as well as with some of our friends like statesman Susan Humphreys, who's one of our representatives, but also went to the Statesman Academy and one of the first Statesman Academies that ever existed.
And I'm going to get to that, but I want to make a couple statements here just really quick, because the audience here knows I'm a former partisan. I'm a Republican Speaker of the House. That's how I got nominated. That's how I won. I was a party leader. I led a presidential campaign. I get that, right? But on this show, and what we do is actually around values, right? We don't really give a care about the health or success of the Republican Party in Kansas. But what we find is that the Kansas people competing for the nomination, those 9 people, are closer on our values than the people that are competing the Democratic nomination. That's true in most states? Is that true in Kansas, what we're seeing?
We care about people, but we're not about who's running. We're not about which party affiliation particularly they have. We are about the issues. But I would say 10 out of 10 times, if you line up the issues, if you line up the individuals, the people who actually care about biblical principles, who care about life, who care about religious freedom, and tend to speak about those things in a way that actually aligns with our values, they're going to be a Republican almost 100% of the time.
And I agree with that, because one of the biggest differences that I've seen is that the people on the left, they want to consider, say, like this abortion or the transgender surgeries, they call that healthcare. It's, killing a human being or taking a healthy body and turning it into a body with a chronic disease until you die. We don't consider that healthcare. We jump to it as a justice issue, right? Is that fair? Like Republicans tend to think you're talking about justice and who gets to be God and who's accountable when you do a permanent damage to a body. The Democratic nominees, they're often this weird thing of saying like, well, how do we help people pay for it? They're not even aware of the victimization maybe that's occurring in our schools yet. And is that true in Kansas? I know that that's what's going on in the governor's race in Virginia. The families are pointing this out to the Democratic nominees in the media, and they're like, knock us over with a feather. We had no idea that they're actually boys in the girls' locker room, that they're actually recruiting our kids into these sex lifestyles, and that they're feigning like this is news to them. Is that happening in Kansas, or are they still trying to keep this going?
100%. I mean, the number of families that call us that tell us that there's a boy trying to enter their daughter's bathroom in school, or really explicit books in kids' libraries, all sorts of things. They're still claiming it's not happening, or they're still saying it's not happening very much. We were working on what's known as the Given Name Act last year, which essentially says that, oh, you need to tell parents when a child decides to go by a different name. That's all the bill did. You just need to tell them. Right? They need to be aware that you're calling their child a different name or using different pronouns. Apparently, oh, this doesn't happen. We don't do this. But we have record after record after record of this happening. But we really believe that those kind of conversations are going to be a huge deal in this governor's race.
Brittany Jones, the new president of Kansas Family Voice. If you don't know about her yet, she is one of our younger, more dynamic presidents. She's on her way up. She was on the staff when I got hired as CEO at Family Policy Alliance. She's one of the smartest brains I know, mobilizing and working with the local church and just Christians like my wife and my friends to meet us where we are, not being overly political, but saying like, hey, let's rally, let's raise our voice and fix this. Kansas had to do one of those things where it wasn't partisan. You had to override your governor, at least try to tell everybody that's what family policy councils exist for. When people say, man, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, they're not going to do this, and it certainly is going to come from the Chamber of Commerce. But kids are getting hurt, and the governor is the only one in the way of it, probably because of the Chamber of Commerce. What did you do there? Because to me, that's the so what of what's on the ballot next year.
Yeah, thank you so much, Craig. That's incredibly kind, and I'm incredibly grateful for Family Policy Alliance and my time at Family Policy Alliance. Yeah, so we've been able to override the governor, who, as you said earlier, our current governor, she's been in office since 2019. We've been able to override her more than 20 times on social issues. One year, I think we overrode her 12 times. But it took years. So from 2019 to 2023, we didn't override her one time on a social issue because of the makeup of the House and the Senate. And so since 2020, the 2022 election, we've had a much stronger conservative Republican supermajority in both the House and the Senate. And so been able to thankfully work with leadership in both chambers, build bridges, bring people along so that we have been able to override the governor on the fairness of women's sports, which she vetoed 3 times. We have been able to override her veto on the Help Not Harm law, which she also vetoed 3 times. Things like ensuring that children in the womb receive a tax deduction. We've had to override her on just basic things like that, ensuring that pregnancy resource centers are getting the resources they need and that people are aware of them. But we've worked diligently with lots of different allies to be able to override the governor. And thankfully, House and Senate leadership have been right there with us. But it does take organizations like the Family Policy Councils in the state to really bring those groups together, bring unity, and really bring that push. Because for a long time, we were told to take our social issues, go home and sit down. No one wanted to hear from us. Our issues weren't winning issues. But thankfully, people like Family Policy Alliance, other issues, the Policy Councils in the states stayed faithful, kept fighting, kept saying these issues matter. And the electorate has caught up with us.
So, folks, if you're listening at home, and I introduced her as one of our younger, more energetic people, she just complained for people of a certain age. She just complained that it took her from 2019 until 2023, 4 years, to begin overriding a governor 20 times. That's in the way of what we believe in. Folks, that's the power of the organizations that we're trying to raise up, that you've helped us raise up, family policy councils. It's different than anything else you've ever experienced in your life. Which movement did it take 4 years to go from zero to hero for a kid who's being abused sexually by their teachers and their coaches in a locker room? We're able to do that in a bipartisan way using this model, not only in Kansas, but in more than half of the country. So if you're in one of these states, these blue states, quote unquote, if you're in one of these purple states, quote unquote, I live in Michigan. The difference between Michigan and Kansas, the difference between Michigan and, say, Iowa or North Carolina or Ohio, that one with leftist progressives that did this easily in the Obama era, that are now called ruby red states, has been the Family Policy Council organizations in those states. That's my opinion, and we can back it up with metrics. And I try to introduce you to people like Brittany and her peers so you understand this. So if you're listening to my voice, I want you to know, if you live in Kansas, the first thing you do when you get off this, and different than any other national group, is you sign up for your state group. You get involved where you live first. We're the national organization that helps supplement that and tie all the good ideas together and amplify them. But you get involved in your state. Brittany, tell them why that's so important to be involved where you live, and tell them about how we mobilize through the church too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so vital to be involved where you live because so much of what we face every day, what's happening in your school system, what's even happening with religious freedom for your church, or with if you're trying to foster or adopt, we were able to pass the adoption conscience bill last year to protect adoptive families. But so much of that is happening at the state level. It's happening through administrative rules and regulations. It's happening through bills that are coming through your state capital. And of course, also through your local elections as well, but those are the ones that touch you first. What's happening in DC matter. It absolutely matters, and don't want to downgrade that at all. But it takes there's so many steps between you and what's happening in DC. Things that happen in your state capital are the things that impact you directly every day. They impact your children. They guide what they're being taught in school. They guide what your church can do. And that's the beauty of the family policy councils, is we have those direct connections with your legislators and with the executives in your administration. We also have direct connections with pastors around your state. We're able to bring pastors together to pray, to teach their congregants about different issues. We try to resource them through our different church groups. Our group is called Engage, but it's a group of pastors that are not just engaging in prayer, but they're engaging in the issues. They're learning from each other. They're learning how to engage their congregants. And it's been amazing to see how the culture changes as pastors lead on these issues.
And folks, this is just a teaser. We want you to plug in. We want you to join your local family policy council. We have the link below, so you can do that right now. We're going to go back to talking about Kansas because they're doing something that is consequential to you federally and nationally too. But I just wanted to pause and tell you how important that is. What we're trying to do together is we're manually altering the turnout in elections. And here's why. We can complain as long as we want about Caesar, right? But the truth is, we're Caesar. If you live in America and you have America, you have the right to vote. If you do, you're over 18 and you have the right to vote in your state. If you're not voting in every election, if they want to widen the sidewalks, if they want to refinance the library, that is your bags of gold. Those are your talents that the master gave you. And he's going to ask you, what did you do with those? And what does he say if you say, I didn't bother to vote? You wicked what? We all know the way Jesus says that the Father is going to think of us. With that conviction, I know that you're saying, oh my Lord, I want to be a good steward of my country, my state, my school district. How do I do that? Christians Engaged helps you. It's a civics play. We're not going to tell you who to vote for there. We just want you to vote in every single election. If every Christian voted in every election, we vote roughly at or below the rate of Medicaid and homeless people as Christians, because we say we're not going to participate in this world. But that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says it's actually our government that's a blessing from God, and we have to be stewards of it. So please, you'll see the link below on that too. That's the answer. That's how Kansas goes from woke and broke and hurting kids to this amazing opportunity that we have. But we've talked a little bit about the governor's race. We can talk a little bit more about that. But folks, we control the things we control, and you help us do that with excellence and efficiency as we represent the Lord in his word. But, we need your help, and there's a lot of challenges, and there's things outside of our control. So we've had so many wins on the Supreme Court, but tell the listeners, guys, you don't win everything. We've been watching baseball lately. It's in October. You get 300 and you're in the Hall of Fame. Tell us about what's next in the Supreme Court. We hope they pick up and where we're trying to break through. Tell them First of all, tell about the case and why Kansas was the leader on.
Yeah. So some really exciting things are before the Supreme Court soon. One of them that is my absolute honor to get to help lead an amicus brief that was written by myself and my co-counsel Renee Carlson from True North Legal in Minnesota, also a state that has an interesting political makeup. But we wrote an amicus brief in the Hecox versus Little case, which is the fairness women's sports case. We were able to write an amicus brief for Representative Barb Ehart from Idaho. And you're wondering does an attorney from Kansas and an attorney from Minnesota wind up writing a brief for a representative from Idaho? But it's because of this alliance. I got to know Representative Ehart several years ago when I was at Family Policy Alliance, and I got to do a little behind the scenes work with her on the Fairness Women's Sports Act when it first was passed in Idaho in 2020. And so here we are 5 years later, and we're now helping her defend that law that she was
No,
able
but
to lead
this
on
is another one.
just 5 years ago.
I know. No, and I should have done a better job leading up to it. That's a huge win that Kansas has been a part of. I was grousing a bit, because I wanted people to know about the Bill of Rights that you passed, the Women's Bill of Rights. You were one of the first states to do that. We go back and we say a Bill of Rights is kind of a restatement of federal and state rights in policy, more granularly to kind of help these judges that go all the way through Harvard Law School and don't know what a boy or girl is, right? Where you're giving them a clue. And even when you give them a guidepost saying the sky is blue, not green in Kansas, and you try to get that to the Supreme Court, I just thought it'd be fun to say, what happens when you have these people, 9 people that think they're gods? What do they say when you try to tell them like an obvious thing, like a Bill of Rights saying, we're going to restate the 14th Amendment? What do they say to you?
They say, I don't know.
Yeah,
So
right.
actually,
Yeah,
all
they
of
say
these
we don't have
things go
time for that,
together,
right?
right?
Yeah, we don't have time for the
No,
truth,
and
even our own friends. I just
no,
wanted people to know that it's a slog that we're in. I'm not complaining and saying we have to redo the Supreme Court. I'm just saying, like, it's okay to grouse here, Brittany, and let them know, like, thank you for your support. But this is hard work. That's what I want them to know. Like, not everything breaks our way. We need help because we can win the
yeah,
same issue next year, but we have to have the support to bring it back to them on a different case next year. That's all I wanted you to explain. I'm not the lawyer here. I just
yeah.
wanted you to talk about that part of what we do as an alliance.
No, I'm happy to happy to talk about that too. And just a point is a supermajority. People are like, "Oh, you have a Republican supermajority. That's easy." I'm sorry. Have you ever gotten 5 people to think the same thing about the same thing and stay together on multiple votes? I have to get 84 House members and 27 senators who all want a popularity contest to vote with me every single time. That is not easy. So that's just one point. But then we have a Supreme Court in Kansas. Our state Supreme Court is a radical court who not only created a right to abortion, but just recently said they didn't know what a girl was. And at the same time that we were passing the Fairness Women's Sports, literally on the same day, there was a hearing for the Women's Bill of Rights that Riley Gaines testified for. And the Women's Bill of Rights is all about saying, we know what a boy is. We know what a girl is. We know what a mom and a dad are. It's all it says. And now the Supreme Court it's been sued and and saying that it should block people from changing their sex on their driver's license. And now the Supreme Court is refusing to hear that case. They're refusing to protect our most vital documents, our driver's license, and ensure that men aren't trying to take women's spaces. And so we're going to have to come back and we're going to have to fix that law to make sure the court listens to us and to make sure the court actually follows the law.
Folks, it's not just Kansas. It's not just Kansas. And I just think we're so many years into what I call like a deflection or a projection. When they started saying that Donald Trump was trying to end, democracy and all this other junk, 5 or 6 years ago, I was just really curious about why they're so animated about it. But in month after month, it appears that was their plan, like maybe this whole thing, and they really are despising it when they can't make up words and laws out of a whole cloth. So back to where we started the call, let's end with hope. We walk some people through the messiness of the sausages that we make in our advocacy work. And I wanted them to hear that because I wanted them to hear how they invest their time, talent, or treasure in us. It's one of the 3, right? Including listening to the show. We want you to know we're taking the stewardship of that very seriously. And there's a lot of hope because we're talking about the chicanery of the judges and this governor and everything else. She was overridden 20 times. These judges will be replaced. Common sense is prevailing at the U.S. Supreme Court. Brittany, how do we wrap this up and let people know that, yeah, we had to tease a little bit about the stakes in Kansas, but that you think we can win next year if people actually respond to what we're saying and get behind you?
Yeah, no, we are incredibly hopeful for the governor's race, as well as some things that are happening in other areas of our government. But there are some amazing individuals running in this race who truly love the Lord, who truly care about the people of Kansas. And we're excited for Kansans to get to know them. In Kansas, we have a history of every 8 years, we change which party is running the executive branch. So it's about time for us to finally have a conservative Republican in that seat again. I don't know what that will look like because I've never been in the state when we had a conservative Republican in the state in the executive branch, but I am excited to see what that will look like. I'm excited to see how this race goes. And I'm excited for Kansans to get to know these people. And that's why it's so important for people to get engaged because their vote really does matter. We've seen some of these races turn on a couple of votes, and it is up to the church to activate, to engage, and to get out there and vote.
Amen. From your lips to God's ears, folks, it's already happening in Virginia and New Jersey this year. It's going to happen in Kansas next year. Michigan has swept between parties since 1958, every two. So we have a lot of opportunity to grow, but we're only going to succeed if you help us join, do what you are thinking about doing right now. Say, this time I'm going to click. This time I'm going to raise my hand. I'm going to get involved and see what these guys are doing. They took an issue that everybody made fun of them on. That was a 50-50 issue. It's an 80-20 issue right now. We are mobilizing in America and we can win everywhere, but we need your help. And until next week, our prayers and best wishes are with you. God bless you all.